Part 65. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 641. After hearing Fuxi's words, Wang Feng immediately stopped talking, took a deep breath, and looked at Fuxi seriously, because he knew that what he was about to hear next was the most important privacy of the human race. Fuxi looked at Wang Feng's expression. Perhaps because of Wang Feng's military temperament, he nodded with satisfaction. Then, he didn't turn around at all. The hair on the back of his head automatically hit him a few times without the wind. On the control panel behind him, the images on the big screen suddenly switched. The blue planet that Wang Feng was extremely familiar with appeared in the center of the screen again, and then Fuxi's deep voice sounded. Once, we humans were the most powerful race in the universe. At the beginning of the image you saw, we humans occupied the 8 major galaxies in the universe. At that time, it can be said that it was the most glorious time for our human race. However, with the emergence of the cosmic ghost, the disaster for the human race began. What you see is only our Yanhuang galaxy. At that time, the 8 major galaxies occupied by the human race were simultaneously attacked by the ghosts of the universe. Because our Yanhuang galaxy is the most powerful among the human race, we were also targeted. There are 2 fleets coming to attack us. However, we didn't make it easy for them. The 2 fleets were completely annihilated. This was their biggest loss in the battle between the space ghost and the human race. The beautiful sister galaxy and the English galaxy didn't even eliminate one of their fleets, and they fled in a hurry, bringing shame to the human race. Having said this, Fuxi's eyebrows stood up and he was furious. Grandma, what kind of thing do you think you just ran away without even being beaten a few times? Son of a bitch, don't let me meet them, otherwise I'll knock them over one by one. They seem to have arrived at our place. Wang Feng reminded in a low voice. I know. Fuxi shouted. I was the one who brought them here in the first place. Speaking of this, Fuxi suddenly shook his head gently. Forget it. Instead of talking about this, let's talk about something useful to you. Then, Fuxi looked at Wang Feng and sighed softly. At the beginning, we set a huge trap in the galaxy. At that time, we actually fought hard because we didn't know what our galaxy would look like after detonating those planets. What would our galaxy look like? Can the mother planet be spared? But at least we understand that no matter what, the worst result is that we die together with the intruders, and they can't take any advantage. Crack. At this moment, Wang Feng suddenly saluted Fuxi with a military salute. This was not for him personally, but for the human race he was talking about. Even if you know you are outmatched, you still have to fight to the end. This is the momentum of a soldier. Back then, on the battlefield, countless warriors, both our own and the enemy, did things that made their opponents admire them. Therefore, their bodies were also treated with the highest standards and the most respect by their enemies. Attitude towards it? This has nothing to do with belief or position, it is just a soldier's respect for another soldier, because the other soldier is worthy of his profession. Some people say that soldiers are just war machines. They are only responsible for killing on the battlefield. This may be true, but don't forget that they are also human beings and have human feelings. However, on the battlefield, they will suppress everything and force themselves to become the kind of war machine that others hope for. In the eyes of politicians, the death of soldiers is always a number. If 10,000 people die on our side and 20,000 die on your side, we win. They will never understand what that one and the string of zeros behind it represent, and they will never know that every number in it represents a living life. From Fuxi's eyes, Wang Feng saw sadness. He knew that this man had at least been on the battlefield and experienced life and death. This is a very peculiar feeling for a soldier. He can recognize it as long as it is someone of his own kind. As long as the aura on his body is not felt by other soldiers, it is impossible for him to feel it. Including before, Wang Feng had heard Tian Tian say that the first person to fly a plane to hit an enemy ship was Wang, and he didn't feel this way now. But now seeing Fuxi's expression, seeing him proudly saying that his own Yanhuang galaxy directly destroyed the two invader fleets, he felt inexplicably excited. Third Master. Our home planet. She is still there. Right. Wang Feng looked at Fuxi and said excitedly. Ha 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 ha. Fuxi laughed. I'm still here, and of course the mother star is too. I said, as long as our human race is still there, the mother star will definitely be there too. Where is the mother planet? Wang Feng asked excitedly. Not in this galaxy. Fuxi sighed and said. On this planet, all that are left are the descendants of our original warriors. We are fighters, so. Having said this, Fuxi looked at Wang Feng, stretched out his hand, and touched his head. You should know what a warrior means, right? In fact, it's no different than cannon fodder. Back then, when the entire galaxy exploded, all of us gathered on the home star found that the explosion we launched seemed too shocking, and even the home star was not immune. So, all the people on our home planet, without anyone's call, voluntarily activated an ability that is taboo for us humans, time and space reversal. This ability is an innate skill of our human race. It should be said that everyone has the ability to transport an object directly through time and space to any place at any time. But at that time, because we had countless people working together, we actually successfully teleported our home planet to a galaxy that we had never been in contact with before, and that galaxy was actually all uninhabited planets. But after initiating that transmission, we also learned about the existence of cosmic ghosts, so we used our advanced technology to start time and space travel. We have been to many planets, and only then did we realize that the creature that attacked us at that time was a creature that the entire universe was afraid of or avoided. And we also know that since we destroyed two of their fleets, they have no intention of letting us go. But the good news is that when we activated our powers together, what succeeded was that the star of China, the blue planet you see, traveled through time and walked in front of the cosmic ghost. However, as long as the cosmic ghosts still exist, we will always be under their threat. In order to protect our home star, we chose to leave and come to other galaxies. On our home star, we left behind the continuation of each race. Let's see. Having said this, Fuxi's hair was flying, he was clicking wildly on the control panel, and the scenes on the screen were constantly switching. The scenes being switched should all be from other planets, but Wang Feng had no interest in these. He directly interrupted Fu 11's operation. Stop. Is this what you asked me to see? Wang Feng looked at Fu 11 blankly, with tears left in the corners of his eyes. Tian Tian. Come here. Wang Feng waved. Tian Tian came to Wang Feng with an inexplicable expression on his face. Wang Feng didn't care so much. He stretched out his arms and hugged Tian Tian directly. Come. Tell him, what is the most important thing for us humans? He is Fuxi. Human Emperor Fuxi. Your leader. Do you think he needs me to tell him the principles of mankind? Tian Tian looked at Wang Feng with a surprised look on his face and said. Bah! Is he a gross human emperor? Or rather, he has been corrupted by this idiot robot. He has become an idiot himself. Wang Feng pointed his index finger at human Emperor Fuxi's nose and cursed. Such an idiot. Do you want me to listen to him? Fuxi looked at Wang Feng with a surprised expression. This was the first time for him to be pointed at and scolded at his age. Are you looking at wool? Wang Feng continued to point at Fuxi and cursed. I know what you just said. You mean, because you all activated your powers together, at the most critical moment, you moved the home star, so that the home star is still in a certain galaxy and is operating safely, right? Yes. Fuchsie nodded. Is there an error in this? I didn't say there was anything wrong with this. In fact, it was done well. At least it hugged our home planet. Moreover, because of this, we humans have lost the function of hair, right? That's right. Fuchsie sighed sadly. For humans, this is an incredible skill. It can transport a planet instantly through time and space to another galaxy. This not only requires all humans on the planet at the time to activate their superpowers together. Moreover, what they imagined in their minds was also the same place. Fortunately, at that time, we had been exploring the Milky Way, which was a galaxy without any living things. So, when we were activating the superpower, the leader at the time, Pangu, just shouted, "Galaxy." Then we arrived in the Milky Way, but we only left some descendants behind. Then, we all dispersed and continued to look for planets that can accommodate life. Because we know that the cosmic ghost will come back sooner or later. We have dealt them heavy blows, and they will never let us go. This planet can also be regarded as a branch of human beings. However, like all planets, if you do not reach the 8th level creature, it is impossible to obtain the real secrets of the human race. Are you ready to know all this? Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 642. After hearing Fuxie's words, Wang Feng smiled softly and said, "If you want to say something, I can probably guess some of it if you ask me. From what you just said, I heard your concern for your home planet. If I guessed correctly, you should have left human heritage on many planets. In other words, in the entire universe, there are many planets where humans live. Actually, those of us on other planets are not cared about by you. What you care about is only the home planet and the people on it, right?" Fuxie looked at Wang Feng with a complicated expression on his face. He shook his head and said, "Almost, but not entirely right. We have left behind our descendants on many planets. We just don't want the inheritance of mankind to be cut off at our hands. Of course, the mother star is the most important. Even if you all die, as long as the mother star is still there will still be hope for mankind. So everything we do is indeed for the mother star. This is related to a big secret of the mother star. It's useless to tell you before you reach the mother star. I can only tell you that only when the mother star is there, the inheritance of mankind can continue. If the mother star is destroyed, then, no matter how much humankind develops, there is no way to recapture the glory that our country has passed through. As soon as the cosmic ghost appeared, it forced the human race to destroy its own galaxy. Even the home star had to be relocated to avoid that powerful enemy. Do you call this glory?" Wang Feng sneered and said, "I don't care how important the home planet is to mankind, and I don't care what the loss of the home planet means to mankind. I will only fight for the people around me. Perhaps in your understanding, our current planet is just a place you randomly found where your descendants can temporarily live, but for me, this is my home planet and the place where I was born. I will not fight for a planet that I don't even know is there, and the humans on that planet. I will only fight for the people around me. Everything I do is for them. Okay. I am not going to correct your idea. In fact, it is very likely that humans on other planets have similar ideas to yours. After all, they have never lived on their home planet." Fuxie shook his head sadly. "However, no matter what, you are at least still a human being and a member of our human race. Therefore, regardless of why you go to fight our enemies, at least in my opinion, you are still helping the mother planet. So, you should also get the reward you deserve. As for what you want to do after you get your reward, that is your business. I have no right to interfere and cannot interfere." "Award?" Wang Feng was stunned for a moment, then looked at Fuxie. "Well." Fuxie sighed, then walked to a place similar to a safe and opened it. Inside was something that looked a bit like a brick. No, basically Wang Feng can be sure that this thing should be considered a piece of brick. I spent so much effort to open this door after reaching the strength of an 8th level creature, but just for a brick? However, from the tile, Wang Feng could sense the huge energy fluctuations emanating from the tile, even without the help of Tiankai. Gently picking up the brick, Fuxi walked to Wang Feng, and then handed the brick to Wang Feng. Although you don't seem to be very interested in your home planet, it doesn't matter to me. Anyway, as long as your enemy is a cosmic ghost, it's fine. For the rest, it's up to you whatever you want. This is an energy block that our human race will leave behind on every planet. It is actually nothing special. It is just compressed life energy. Absorb it. Maybe you can directly use your strength to the impact reached level 9. The energy inside it is the most suitable energy for human beings, because this person was originally from our generation and input his own energy into it before he died. I know that you have something called Apocalypse that can help you absorb energy, but this time, don't use it, just use your own body to absorb it, because after the transformation of Apocalypse, the energy that was originally suitable for you, maybe it will also become the same as the life energy of other living things, good or bad. Wang Feng looked at Fu 11, then took a deep breath, stretched out his right hand, and grabbed the brick. Xiao Lei. Those people from Tiandu City base are here again, bringing Lu Fei's head with them. At the Bishui Garden Club, Lu Feng said to Duan Lei, who was busy with his head down. Tell them, now that the lunatic is not here, we don't have any medicine to give them, and it will be the same regardless of whoever they bring. Duan Lei said without raising his head. As compensation, their people can enter our base and receive our protection, but they must abide by the rules of our base. I think they already know your thoughts, so they brought everyone here this time. Lu Feng looked at Duan Lei and said. Ah. Duan Lei was startled and looked up at Lu Feng. Forget it. You are a member of us humans after all, so you can make some arrangements. Lu Feng nodded, then grabbed the walkie-talkie and said inside. Let all of them come in. After putting down the intercom, Lu Feng looked at Duan Lei. Xiao Lei. According to the instructor's estimate, the wormhole should be fully open today, and the Devourer army should appear here soon, right? The madman hasn't come back yet. I don't know what happened to him in the underwater passage for so many days. What should we do next? He will come back. Duan Lei looked up and looked at Lu Feng. Old Lu. What we have to do now is to delay time. No matter what, we have to delay until the madman comes back, so, during this period of time, we can only rely on ourselves. Huh. Okay. Lu Feng looked up and looked outside, and said with some emotion. Without that guy, I'm really not used to it. Xiao Lei. They are here. At this time, Li Yingning walked into the club, looked at Duan Lei and said. Enemy appeared in Jianguan town, Xiao Song has. Li Yingning shook his head. Announce it. Our final war has begun. Oh no. Lu Feng's his face changed. What about the survivors of the Tiandu City base? They are still on their way here, and not all of them have passed the Black Dragon Bridge yet. Old Lu. Duan Lei looked at Lu Feng and said softly. Tell the guards of the Black Dragon Bridge to evacuate immediately and return to us. Since they came from Jianguan town, the Black Dragon Bridge, this natural barrier, is no longer useful to us. As for the survivors of Tiandu City, it depends on their luck. After hearing Duan Lei's words, Lu Feng gritted his teeth, then grabbed the walkie-talkie and spoke to the inside. He shouted. Attention all personnel of the Hope Base, enter the war state immediately. All personnel, enter your designated positions, prepare, fight hard. Good luck to you. Then, Lu Feng dropped the intercom and rushed out of the club directly. Behind him were Gui Weivong, Number 7, Qiu Jian, Lu Jiang, Chen Tianhao and other core members of the Hope Base. Looking at the backs of Lu Feng and those core members, Du Enlai sighed lightly. He didn't know how many of these people who rushed out would he see again, and how many would die in this war. But now, the war has come, and it is inevitable. Before Wang Feng comes back, he can only hold on. Guardian Corps. All troops assemble. Hope Corps. All troops assemble. Everyone. Prepare for battle. As soon as they left the club, Lu Feng, Tang Haoshan, and Lu Jiang shouted loudly. In the central square of Bishui Garden, on the large square outside the door, there are now crowds of people. Both the Guardian Corps and the Hope Corps have assembled, because they knew before yesterday that today should be the day when the wormhole opens, which means that their biggest enemy, the Devourer army, has arrived. They have been preparing for this day for a long time. In Ganlin County, tanks and artillery are already ready to go at the outermost wall. Countless survivors also climbed up the wall, holding weapons and looking ahead with a determined look. These survivors are just some evolvers, not soldiers of the two legions, but because of Wang Feng's divine soldiers descending from the sky, they have awakened their fighting spirit. And they also know that this is the biggest disaster for the entire human race. If they can't get through it, human beings will be extinct, and no survivors will be able to escape this disaster. So, under the mobilization of Du Enlai, Lu Jiang, and others, these survivors finally stood up, picked up weapons, and prepared to fight to the death with the upcoming Devourer army. Wang Feng has already told Du Enlai the method used by the survivors of the northern continent to deal with the Devourers. Du Enlai and his team naturally conveyed this method to these survivors. Although they are only evolvers, they can also attach their own abilities to bullets. Although they cannot last long, at least they can attack for a few minutes. This is what Du Enlai requires of them. As long as they use the weapons in their hands to attack the Devourers when the Devourer army just appears, no matter what the effect is, they can evacuate after their physical strength is exhausted. And the subsequent battle will naturally be taken over by the warriors of the two major legions, the Guardian Legion and the Hope Legion. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 643. At this time, Jianguan town was dominated by devourers. In front of them, the whale and great white shark had no ability to resist and were directly used as food by them. Even Li Yingning's pine tree had been drained of its life energy and withered and died. On the boundless sea, there are more devourers, who are constantly gathering towards Jianguan town. The number already exceeds 1 million. As for the Hope Base, under the leadership of Lu Feng and others, the two armies of Guardian and Hope have all entered battle preparations. At this time, there was a huge human team heading towards Ganlin County. They were the survivors who came here from the Tiandu city base. After learning that the Devourer was coming soon, those of them who returned knew very well that relying on their previous thoughts, it was impossible to escape the Devourer's attack. So after gathering everyone and discussing for a long time, they finally decided to come to the Hope Base because according to Li Hixiang's guess, as long as they arrived at the Hope Base, they should be accepted and not be kicked out. However, they did not expect that their arrival would be so coincidental, just in time for the Devourer army to arrive at the Hope Base. They didn't know about this situation originally, but the guards of Black Dragon Bridge said to them directly when they left. The Devourer is coming, you better hurry up, otherwise, we are not sure whether you can reach our headquarters safely. After knowing the news, all the survivors in the city these days were panicked. Those driving vehicles stepped on the accelerator to the bottom and sped away along the road. The other survivors also accelerated their speed and ran forward. There are nearly 10 million people running with great momentum. Of course, there will be some people who will be stepped on by others because of their slow speed. In this crowd, once they fall, they will basically die. Can't stand up anymore. So many people. When the figures of these survivors appeared in the eyes of the survivors at the Hope Base, one survivor couldn't help but cursed, and then asked the person on his right head, "What does it say above?" "Let them in." The man shouted loudly. "Order from above, if they can arrive before the devourer, let them in. Open the door. Let them in." The survivors who received the order shouted to the guards below. Bang! The guard below opened the door, but when he saw the cars at the front rushing towards the door without slowing down at all, he couldn't help but frown. "Parking!" The guard shouted to the vehicle at the front. However, the car didn't seem to hear it. It didn't slow down at all and still rushed towards the door. Bang! A loud gunshot was heard, and at the same time, the car that had rushed through the barrier quickly turned over, dragging dust along the ground, and hit the city wall of Ganlin County. The guard looked around and saw Lu Feng. Lu Feng carried a huge sniper rifle on his shoulder and walked over with an angry look on his face. "Damn it! Do you think this is your home? If you want to enter the Hope Base, be honest with me. Otherwise, get as far away from me as possible." "Lu Tu." The guard at the city gate quickly saluted Lu Feng. "Yes. Remember, this is the base of Hope, our territory. If you encounter anyone who is disobedient, kill them directly. No need to talk nonsense to them." "Yes." The guard stood at attention and loudly agreed. "Who are you? Why did you smash the tires on my car?" A lady in her 30s climbed out of the car in a very embarrassed manner, pointed at Lu Feng and said. Along with her, there were 5 or 6 other people, all of whom climbed out of the overturned car. Moreover, in the arms of this noble lady, there was actually a white cat. I don't know why the cat didn't run away when the car rolled over just now. Attention, everyone. The devourer should have landed and will appear in front of us at any time. You all remember to do what you should do, no more, no less. After emptying your magazines, evacuate immediately. Leave the rest to the 2 armies of Hope and Guardian. Lu Feng simply ignored the lady holding the pet, and instead spoke to the survivor in front of him. Understood. I will pass on this order immediately. The survivor saluted Lu Feng, then turned and ran away. Looking at his back, Lu Feng sighed softly. These survivors were not warriors of the 2 legions at all. However, because Wang Feng said before, the survivors of Bizhu continent had their own aliens. It can be attached to bullets and then used to attack the devourer. It seems to have achieved good results. So now, Hope Base will organize all the survivors who have reached the level of evolution to carry out the first round of attacks on the devourer. Hey! I'm talking to you. The lady holding the pet pointed at Lu Feng and shouted. I am. Shut up. Lu Feng roared loudly. I have no interest in knowing who you are. I want to show off your identity. Go back to your base and show off. Let them line up. If anyone disobeys the command, you have the right to disqualify them from entering the Hope Base. Lu Feng turned to the guard and said, then waved his hand and swept towards Jianguan town, while a group of guard soldiers followed closely behind Lu Feng. Seeing Lu Feng's retreating back, the noble lady shook her head gently and muttered, You are so incompetent. However, perhaps because Lu Feng's previous statement that she could be disqualified from entering the Hope Base scared her, she did not continue to pester him, but obediently ran back to her team. She is the wife of the chief of staff of the Tiandu city base. She originally thought that even if they came to defect to other bases, they high-level officials would at least get some preferential treatment. At least the despicable soldiers in the other base should treat her with respect. Right. But now it seems that the Hope Base is a little different from what I imagined, so before figuring out the situation here, the staff wife feels that it is better to be quiet first. Of course, Lu Feng did not take this noble lady to heart. His mission was to take the Guardian warriors to the direction of Jianguantown to see the situation of the Devourers. Thanks to Lu Feng's previous explanation, the survivors of the Hope Base present felt confident and began to shout and direct the survivors who came here from Tiandu City to queue up to enter Ganlin County. This is mainly because these survivors of the Hope Base were only responsible for farming or construction work before, and were not members of the two major legions, so they did not have much confidence in their hearts. If they are members of the two legions, they know the tempers of Wang Feng and Duan Lei. They have always beaten those who pretend to be pretentious and should not be abused. As for these survivors, because they have just become combat members, they are still not so clear about their positioning. For people like them, if they face a very arrogant person, they will involuntarily feel guilty in their hearts. Due to their lack of confidence, of course, they will be easily suppressed by the other party. After Lu Feng and the others left, they did not appear again for a long time, and the figure of Devourer finally appeared at the end of the sky. So many. When the figure of the Devourer finally appeared in the eyes of the survivors in the Hope Base, one survivor couldn't help but spit and cursed fiercely. At this time, all the survivors in the Hope Base have been taken to Ganlin County by Duan Lei. All the weapons in the reserve base have been taken out by him and equipped to these survivors. Duan Lei knew that those armies of Devourers would definitely not be like zombies, so Duan Lei had no plans to place the defensive front at the defensive wall in Jianguantown or at the Black Dragon Bridge. He directly set the battlefield at the defensive wall in Ganlin County. Duan Lei had all the tanks, artillery, and all available manpower appear here. Ganlin County is the battlefield Duan Lei chose for himself, because he also knows that it is basically impossible to defend all the territory of the Hope Base, so he can only reduce the defense line as much as possible and treat Ganlin County as call the shots on the battlefield. If it weren't for the fact that there were too many people in the Hope Base, Duan Lei might even have set the front line directly at the Bishui Garden. However, due to the addition of the survivors from the Tiandu City base, the population base of the Hope Base more than doubled in an instant. Therefore, it is definitely unrealistic for so many people to crowd into the Blue Water Garden. However, due to Li Yingning's previous reminder, Duan Lei knew the direction of the Devourer's army's attack, so he transferred all the tanks and artillery back and stocked them in the direction of Ganlin County facing Jianguantown. The dense army of Devourers surged toward Ganlin County from the direction of Jianguantown. It seemed like a huge black wave, and it gradually became clear in the eyes of everyone. All ready to fight? Gui Wuivong shouted sharply. At this time, the Hope Corps and the Guardian Corps were also mixed in the defense line of Ganlin County. After the ordinary survivors launched the first wave of attacks, the rest of the battle would be completely left to them. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 644. Here they come. Here they come. A survivor said nervously. Since they had never participated in a battle before, these survivors had almost no combat experience at all, which was completely different from the calm and composed warriors of the two legions. Brother! Don't be nervous. Get close before you fight. A warrior of hope gently patted the survivor's shoulder and said with a relaxed smile. Remember to attach your abilities to the bullets later, otherwise, they will not have any effect on them. Yes. Got it? I can do it. I can do it. The survivor nodded vigorously, but from his tense body, it can be seen that the comfort of the warrior of hope did not seem to have any effect. The warrior of hope shook his head. Now he felt that he was lucky to be a warrior of the two legions. Because he had experienced enough battles, even if he saw the dark group of Devourers, he still couldn't feel nervous. When the survivors in front of him were stiff and even trembling because of fear or nervousness, the warrior of hope could not help but feel a sense of superiority in his heart. Perhaps, his ending would be worse than those survivors who seemed extremely nervous in front of the Devourer army, because they only needed to launch the first wave of attacks, and they would evacuate before the Devourer army really reached the defensive wall. and he would stay and really fight with the overwhelming Devourer army. He knew that he would probably die in this war, and he even knew that the possibility of this ending was infinitely close to 100%. But he still felt his sense of superiority in front of other survivors. No matter what, he was a warrior. Even if he died, he would die as a warrior on the way to the charge. Whether it was the Legion of Hope or the Guardian Legion, at the moment when the Devourer army attacked, there was no difference at all. They now had only one identity: warriors. Guardians of mankind. Everyone be quiet. Wait for orders. Calm down. Don't be nervous. One of the survivors who was chosen to be the squad leader said in a low voice, but, although he told others not to be nervous, he held the gun tightly in his hand, and his voice was trembling. Doomsday did not let these people accept the command of the Hope Warrior or the Guardian Warrior, because Doomsday knew that if he let someone who was similar to himself be his leader, they might be more receptive. This is just like Li Yingning in the eyes of others. No one can deny Li Yingning's ability to train soldiers, but let alone the soldiers of the two major legions of Hope and Guardian, even Lu Qiang, Doomsday, and Lu Feng would feel quite uncomfortable in front of Li Yingning. So, if the Hope Warrior or the Guardian Warrior were to be their commander, they might be even more nervous. Seeing the Devourer army approaching, Gui Wuivong directly put the seriously injured on his shoulder, and then shouted, "Listen up. After I shoot, everyone can attack freely. Before I shoot, no one should shoot." At this time, the survivors of the Tiandu city base had just arrived at the Bishui garden. It can be said that they came at the wrong time. "Mr. Duan. This is Lu Fei's head. We will." After seeing Doomsday, Li Hixiang came forward and directly handed over Lu Fei's head in his hand, saying, "Okay. There is no time to care about this now. Since you are here, then, come in." Doomsday interrupted him and sighed. Li Hixiang and his people, the number is close to 10 million, and the sudden increase of so many non-combatants, Doomsday is also very headache, but no matter what, they are also members of the human race. If they can receive it, they can't ignore it. During the time when Wang Feng was away, Doomsday mobilized all the manpower of the Hope base and dug a super large palace underground to accommodate the tens of millions of people in the Hope base. There was no problem at all. So, although Doomsday was a little surprised by the arrival of Li Hixiang and his men, he still did not refuse and asked the Black Dragon Bridge guards to let them in. "Xiao Lei. The Devourer is here. I guess the fight is already going on." At this time, Lu Feng rushed in and shouted, "I've been to Jianguan town. Damn, the Devourers are just like ants. They are endless. I suspect that the Devourer's nest has made us its first target of attack this time. Woof woof." Before Lu Feng finished speaking, a dog barked in the crowd, followed by a coquettish voice. "Ouch. Why are you so rude? Can't you speak a little more quietly? You scared my baby." Lu Feng looked over and found that it was a lady with heavy makeup. The powder on her face was almost half an inch thick. I really don't know where she found the cosmetics in this Doomsday. However, looking at the lady's eyes looking at him, Lu Feng felt a sense of familiarity, disgust, contempt, dislike, and hatred. It seemed that before the end of the world, when he went to pick up a half-discarded steamed bun, he was looked at like this by a lady holding a pet dog in her arms, and he was beaten by several security guards afterwards. "Who let them in?" Lu Feng frowned and asked Doomsday. It was me. Of course, if you think it's inappropriate, you can change my decision now." Doomsday touched his nose and smiled bitterly, then looked at the lady, then looked at Li Hixiang, shrugged his shoulders and said, "This, Mr. Unruly. He is the commander of our legion here. The next battle with the Devourer will be completed under his command, so, he has the right to change any of my orders." In fact, Doomsday also felt a little disgusted with the survivors brought by Li Hixiang, especially those around him, who were all dressed gorgeously and heavily made up, and had a sense of superiority on their faces. That is Li Xiong. Because he had seen the strength of the people in the Hope Base before, and also saw the moment when Wang Feng was like a god descending, so he was more polite, and even a little trembling, not even daring to breathe. However, the people he brought here obviously did not have this awareness. It may be because they were used to the life of the upper class in the Tiandu city base, so for a while, they did not put their identities in the right place. Such people, if they are not beaten, may still cause trouble when they go downstairs. Therefore, the appearance of Lu Feng now is just right. Du Enlai will of course go with the flow and hand this matter over to Lu Feng to deal with. Du Enlai actually has a deep understanding of Lu Feng. He knows that although Lu Feng has the title of Bloody Hand Butcher, he has been labeled as ruthless in their Hope Base. But Du Enlai also knows that Lu Feng has at least a bottom line when doing things. At least, he will definitely ignore those who don't provoke him. Moreover, the people killed by Lu Feng at least had their own way of death, and in order to avoid troubles after going down, it may be necessary to kill people appropriately to establish authority. Du Enlai and Lu Qiang could not do such a thing. Even if they knew that the people in front of them deserved to die, they could not really be ruthless and kill them. Maybe Lu Feng was right. Their personalities were indeed a little unsuitable for this doomsday. At least, if Lu Feng made the decision, he might directly reject these people. After all, the Devourer has come here now, the war has begun, and the arrangements he made before did not include the survivors of the urban base these days. With them, there may not be enough places below, especially these people, who have no intention of asking others to take them in, and still have arrogance on their faces. Although not all people are like this, putting them below will definitely cause a lot of trouble. Du Enlai can't take care of the things on the ground now. If they have any conflicts with other survivors of the Hope Base below, Du Enlai will be in a mess. I scared your dog, right? Lu Feng walked up directly and said to the lady. Humph. Country bumpkin. I'm glad you know, the noble lady said with her head held high. Li Xiong was sweating profusely when he heard what the woman said. He knew Lu Feng's position in the Hope Base, especially just now. Du Enlai had clearly told them that this rough-looking man had the right to change Du Enlai's orders. Is this woman a pig? Couldn't she hear the meaning of Du Enlai's words just now, and now she is still showing a condescending attitude? Li Xiong sighed in his heart and shook his head silently. It might be because these people lived too comfortably in the Tiandu city base, so they had no way to change their identities now. In their hearts, maybe no matter where they went, they should be a high-ranking existence, a noble status. Even if they are now in other bases, they are still unwilling to give up their pride. At this time, a man suddenly walked out of the crowd. He came directly in front of the woman, waved his right hand, slapped the woman hard, and said angrily, "Stinky woman! If you are looking for death, don't drag us with you. Apologize quickly." Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 645. The lady who spoke before was the wife of the Chief of Staff. Whether before or after the apocalypse, she always treated others with a condescending attitude. The person who just came out to slap her was not her husband, because her husband did not return to Tiandu city base, but left with Lu Hongtao. The person who stood up was the concubine of this lady. After all, the staff officer was already very old. Even a soldier with a stronger body than ordinary people would not be able to satisfy this woman who was almost half his age. Therefore, in addition to Cucumber, this woman also hooked up with her husband's adjutant. This adjutant was the student of the staff officer. He was very good at things, and of course he also knew how to observe people's emotions. However, the adjutant was very grateful to this woman. Because of this woman, he had a smooth career in office. Now, of course, he had seen Lu Feng's status in the Hope Base, and he also knew what such a person would do next, so he stood up and slapped this woman directly. Because the adjutant wanted to save this woman. No matter what, they had a physical relationship after all, and he didn't want to see this woman die in front of him. But this woman obviously didn't understand what the adjutant meant. Instead of restraining herself, she pointed the finger at the adjutant. She pointed at the adjutant and screamed. "Well, Woozhekan, have you rebelled against me? Do you still dare to hit me? Do you think that I am easy to bully when you see that my husband is not here? And you? One by one, when my husband was here, you were respectful to me. Now that he is no longer with you, you show such a face one by one. Let me tell you, don't think that I am easy to bully since my husband is not here. Throw her out." In addition, everyone who wants to enter the underground must leave their pets behind. Even people can't be saved. Who has the space to arrange pets for you? The hysterical shouting of this noble lady made Lu Feng frown. Now, Hope Base will soon face a full-scale war. The soldiers of the two legions and the survivors of the Hope Base may have begun the battle with the Devourer, but they actually still want to waste time with such a shrew? Before Lu Feng finished speaking, two guardian warriors rushed forward, grabbed the lady and the dog in her arms, and then walked out of the Blue Water Garden. Lu Feng's order was to throw her out, but these two guardian warriors obviously would not take this noble lady to the Black Dragon Bridge and throw her out of the Hope Base completely. Bishui Garden has now entered a state of war, and all the gates are closed. Therefore, throwing this woman and her dog outside Bishui Garden must be regarded as fulfilling Lu Feng's order. "What are you doing? Let me go. You lowly bitches. Let me go. I will definitely make you regret it." When the woman was taken away by the guardian warriors, she struggled desperately and kept cursing in her mouth. However, with the strength that she had not even reached as an evolver, it was obvious that she could not break free because Wang Feng had absorbed their energy before Source, and was promoted to the guardian warrior of a 5th level creature, etc. The adjutant shouted quickly, and then looked at Lu Feng. "I am willing to give her my place. Just kick me out and let her stay." Lu Feng looked at the adjutant and suddenly sneered. "Do you think we hope that the base owes you something? As long as you come, we must take you in. I'm telling you, the Devourer is here now. I don't have time to waste here with you. If you want to go on, just be obedient and obedient. If you don't want to stay, get out now." After saying that, Lu Feng turned to look at Duan Lei. "I'll go take a look at the first line of defense. They should have already started. Please let them go down quickly. After a while, those of us who launched the first wave of attacks should be back. Let them take the time to recover their strength. Well, go ahead. Be careful and contact us at any time." Duan Lei nodded to Lu Feng. The first line of defense is the defensive wall built around Ganlin County. Because they knew that the Devourer was coming, this defensive wall that was just for show had been reinforced a lot. Duan Lei is planning to use this place as the first line of defense against the Devourer. He will hold it as long as he can. When he can no longer hold on, he will give up here and retreat to the Blue Water Garden. Duan Lei concentrated all the heavy weapons in the Hope Base here, because only here can the tanks and artillery be put away. Moreover, they have to burn out nearly 2 of the ammunition of those artillery and tanks before evacuating here. If there are no accidents, this battle with the Devourer should be a battle that determines the life and death of mankind. Regardless of any reservations, Duan Lei and the others have taken out all their units that can be used to fight. Those tanks are now parked outside the wall. They are driven by Hope Warriors or Guardian Warriors. Everyone knows that the most dangerous people are the drivers and shooters of these tanks. For the others, no matter what, fighting the Devourers on the defensive wall, there is always a possibility of retreat, but those who stay in the tanks, once they rush into the Devourer army, they may never get out again. But even if they know this, the soldiers who become tank drivers and shooters are still not afraid. On the contrary, being able to enter the tank has become the goal of those soldiers. Anyway, in this war that is equivalent to the last war of mankind, everyone may die. In this case, driving a tank and rushing into the enemy group, before dying, watching the devourers struggling under the crushing of the tracks, at least it will be fun, right? The devourer army is getting closer and closer, and the survivors can even see the appearance of these devourers and the flashing light in their eyes. Gui Wuovong is seriously injured, and he is calculating the distance of the devourers in his mind. He is not in a hurry. Although these devourers have already entered the range of the main guns of artillery and tanks, Gui Wuovong did not order an attack. Heavy weapons such as artillery shells cannot be attached with superpowers, so although they are powerful, their lethality is definitely limited. The most important thing is to rely on bullets attached with superpowers to effectively kill these devourers. The first wave of attacks were not launched by the soldiers of the two legions, but by the survivors who had just been armed. Without formal training, their hit rate would definitely not be very expected. Therefore, Gui Wuovong planned to wait until the devourers entered a distance of about 50 meters before launching the first wave of attacks. This distance should be the maximum distance he could accept, because if it was closer, the devourers could reach the defense wall with a charge and engage in close combat with them. At that time, the survivors who were temporarily recruited would not be able to play a big role. Tang Haoshan was holding the long sword given to him by Wang Feng at this time, looking at the devourers who were approaching with a gloomy face. Behind him were 20,000 soldiers of the Guardian Legion. They would replace the survivors after they launched the first wave of attacks and then evacuated, becoming the main force of this war. The Martian trio, Lu Wanting, Li Tianxiang, Su Mo, Zhang Xiu, Meng Fei, Luo Keiying. These core members who have accompanied the Hope Base all the way to the present, all appeared here at this moment. They will use their bodies and their blood to defend the green water garden behind them and the dream they have been holding on to since the end of the world. Perhaps before Wang Feng, when the Hope Base had not been established, they were just like other survivors of the end of the world, struggling hard for their own survival. But now, the Hope Base has ignited the blood in their hearts and detonated their fighting spirit. Death, for them, it is no longer so unacceptable, but they must die on the road to fighting to protect the hope in their hearts. Everyone knows in their hearts that whether they can still be alive after today is a big unknown, but now they have surprisingly no fear in their hearts, but instead feel a sense of excitement. It has been a long time since Wang Feng left, and they still have great expectations for this guy who can always create miracles. They believed that when Wang Feng appeared in front of them again, he would definitely give them a shocking appearance, but they were not sure whether they could hold on until then. Tang Haoshan looked at the devourer getting closer and closer, turned around and looked at Lu Wanting standing behind him, and hesitated to speak. Originally, they hoped that Lu Wanting would stay in the Bishui garden, because Wang Feng was not there, and they absolutely did not want Lu Wanting to have any accidents during this period. But Lu Wanting insisted on coming here. Only Duan Lei and Shen Yisan were left in the club. Even Lu Qiang brought the Hope Legion to the front line at this time, ready to join the first head-on confrontation with the Devourer. Lu Wanting's persistence made everyone helpless, but in a while, the Mars trio would follow Lu Wanting closely in the battle. This was Tang Haoshan's death order to the Mars trio. Bang! As the Devourer gradually approached, the heavy wound on Gui Wuovong's shoulder finally let out a huge roar, opening the prelude to this earth-shattering battle between the Hope Base and the Devourer. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 646. With the roar of serious injuries, the survivors who had been recruited to prepare for the first wave of attacks also started their own attacks. However, they were not real combatants after all, and their attacks were obviously very messy. Fortunately, there are quite a few devourers, so even if their marksmanship is not good, they will not fail. Hey! Bro! A hope warrior reached out and patted the shoulder of a survivor next to him, because the survivor looked quite nervous. Don't be nervous. If you feel like you can't control your emotions, just shout. Believe me, this will work. Ah! After hearing his words, the survivor didn't even hesitate. He took a deep breath, then opened his mouth and roared loudly. Ah! Some survivors nearby, probably because they were infected by this person, also started yelling. The roar seemed to be contagious. Soon, the survivors on the entire defense line all shouted loudly. In their shouts, countless bullets with supernatural powers poured towards the Devourer army. Boom! Boom boom boom! Those tanks and artillery also began to roar at this time, and countless shells exploded in the Devourer army. However, the effect of these shells did not seem to be particularly ideal. Although some Devourers were hit, they did not cause a fatal blow to them. It seems that the damage of this pure thermal weapon is really not that obvious on the Devourer. Whoosh! Whoosh! Several hurricanes parked behind the wall also began to show off their power at this time. Each hurricane launched its own surface-to-surface missiles at the Devourer army. Amidst the earth-shaking explosions, these missiles detonated one after another among the Devourer army's lineup, clearing out clearings. These missiles finally achieved the effect they had expected. The Devourers near the center of the explosion point were all directly vaporized in the explosion of the missiles, leaving no bones left. Seeing this scene, I hope that the survivors of the base will be immediately boosted in morale, and the guns in their hands will be held more steadily. The bullets will be poured crazily towards the heads of the Devourers as if they are free. Perhaps because this was just the initial attack, basically all of the Devourers that appeared were Predator-level Devourers, and even very few were at the elite level. However, even without the leadership of senior Devourers, these Devourers still risked their lives and rushed towards the defensive wall of Ganlin County. Although many of them were beaten to pieces by bullets with supernatural powers and suffered heavy losses, they still swarmed towards the defensive wall as if they didn't see it at all. All right? Survivors! All evacuate! Legion of Hope and Guardian Legion, next, it's time for our performance. Seeing that the Devourer was less than 10 meters away from the defensive wall, Tang Haoshan shouted loudly, then raised his knife, shouted and rushed forward. Come on! The Guardian warriors behind him also drew out their weapons, rushed forward, and jumped directly onto the defensive wall, preparing to start a close battle with the Devourer. At this moment, the tanks parked outside the defensive wall started their engines and rushed towards the tide-like Devourer in front of them without hesitation. Da-da-da-da. The machine gun on the tank never stopped roaring. Every shooter who controlled the machine gun widened his eyes and stared at the seemingly endless Devourers ahead. He pulled the trigger hard with his hand, and kept pour bullets like raindrops towards them. Evacuate! Quick! Go to the Blue Water Garden immediately! A leader of the survivors shouted loudly, but at this time, his order seemed to have been drowned out by the fierce gunfire and shouts around him. No one was willing to obey his order and remove the defensive wall. Although, when those survivors were recruited, Duan Lei was very clear about the tasks assigned to them. They did not need to participate in the battle with the Devourer. Their mission is just to take the guns issued to them, and when the Devourers attack, fire all the ammunition in these guns at the Devourers. Then, when the Devourers approach, you can evacuate directly. Of course, the rest is taken over by the two legions of Hope and Guardian, so relatively speaking, their mission is relatively safe. However, after experiencing the initial fear, the survivors now seem to have become angry. They all stared angrily, yelling hysterically, and pointed the bullets from their guns at the people in front of them. Devourer launched. Since the life energy in the body is limited, the bullets they fire now no longer have their own superpowers, so the damage they cause to the devourer is also very limited. But they still kept shooting, and no one listened to the survivors' order to withdraw from the battle and return to the Blue Water Garden. Your grandma. The survivor who had just given the order saw that his words did not get any support from anyone, and he could not help but get angry and shouted again. What the hell are you showing off? Without superpowers, you are just wasting bullets, you know? Don't waste time here, retreat quickly, return to the Green Water Garden to recover your strength. If you want to join the battle, at least wait until your strength is recovered. All soldiers except the 2 legions, evacuate. Lu Feng, who had just arrived here and was ready to join the battle, also saw this situation and shouted loudly to the zombies, and also shouted to the guards around him. Hurry up! Let them go, save some ammunition. This war doesn't have to last until how long, who the hell let them waste it here? With Lu Feng's words, and the help of those guarding warriors, the survivors finally began to retreat, but judging from the fighting spirit still burning in their eyes, when they recover their strength and face the devourer again, they should not be as nervous and afraid as before. As soon as these people evacuated, the defense wall of Ganlin County suddenly seemed much emptier, but fortunately, since the devourers all came from Jianguan town, they mainly attacked that section of the defense wall and did not stretch the battle line very long. This is still relatively good news for the Hope base. At least, the defense position is not that long, so they don't have to go to the battlefield with all their troops, and they can take turns to rest, and the time they can delay will naturally increase exponentially. And those survivors who retreated did not go far. After leaving the defense wall for less than 100 meters and giving up their position to the soldiers of the 2 legions, these people refused to leave. It's just a rest. Isn't it the same here? Yes. Why do we have to go back to the Green Water Garden? After recovering our strength, we have to run so far to come here. It's not troublesome enough. I'm going to rest here. No one can persuade me. Where do you get so much nonsense? You might as well rest quickly if you have the energy to talk. After you recover your strength, go and fight those sons of bitches. That's right. Let's rest here. There's no need to go back to the Green Water Garden. Although we are not warriors, we are not cowards. Fight them. It seems that the battle just now has aroused the blood in their hearts. None of these survivors are willing to retreat directly to the Green Water Garden to recover their strength according to the original plan. Instead, they sit down directly and look at the battlefield where the fierce battle is going on. At this time, the 40 tanks left outside the wall have rushed into the Devourer army and are deeply trapped in the enemy formation. Some tank shooters are directly torn to pieces by the Devourers who surge up because they are exposed outside. But this did not stop the tank from charging forward. The Hope Warriors or Guardian Warriors driving the tanks did not care about the shooter's life or death. They just stared at the front and laughed wildly. Because they knew that it might not be long before they would be reunited with the shooter exposed on top. They were just one step ahead of themselves. Even Duan Lei and his men did not know that the drivers and shooters who entered the tanks regarded themselves as dead the moment they entered the tanks. The task Duan Lei gave them before was to drive the tanks to disperse the dense formation of the Devourers a little, so as to facilitate the attack of the 2 Legion warriors behind. After they achieved their goal, they had to retreat immediately, return to the defense wall, and find a way to evacuate from the tanks. Looking at the pile of explosives in the cab, the tank driver who was rushing in the front had a hideous smile on his face. He looked at the devourer in front of him and laughed wildly. Son of a bitch. Get ready to die with Grandpa. Because he had already felt that his tank was surrounded by devourers at this time, and there were constant knocking sounds coming from the hatch above. It was estimated that it would not be long before the hatch would be opened, and he would become the devourer's food. Pushing the joystick down hard, the tank could go deeper into the devourer's army. Then, the tank driver, a Hope warrior who looked only in his 20s, suddenly smiled brightly. Die. Son of a bitch. Brothers. I'm coming. Boom. Accompanied by a thunderous sound, a huge mushroom cloud rose on the battlefield. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 647. Quick. Everyone, all. Lu Feng, who was raising his arms and shouting to command the battle, was suddenly shocked by the loud noise. Then, he slowly turned his head and looked at the mushroom cloud with an unbelievable face. Tears instantly flowed from his eyes. Lu Feng swore that this was the first time in his life that he cried for others. Before, even when Wang Feng rushed up to detonate the two missiles and put himself in a desperate situation to save them, Lu Feng did not shed a single tear. But now, Lu Feng didn't know why he could no longer control his emotions. His eyes were like a floodgate, and tears flowed. He now understood why these selected tankers looked at him with a smirk on their faces, and at the same time, they all seemed a little mysterious. When selecting tankers, Lu Feng and his team directly selected them freely from the two major legions of Hope and Guardian, and let them sign up themselves. In particular, among these people, there were no warriors with fire abilities or defensive abilities, because they were also responsible for close combat with the Devourer. After selecting these warriors, they gathered together and discussed for a long time. Then, their representative, with a conspiratorial look on his face, ran to Duan Lei and asked him for a warrant. It was a warrant that allowed them to freely choose weapons. What Duan Lei and Lu Feng and others did not expect was that the warrant they wanted was not for choosing some weapons that would allow them to get out of the tank smoothly and return to a safe place smoothly, but a large amount of explosives. When they entered the tank, when they drove the tank and rushed into the Devourer, they were not prepared to come back. No wonder the 40 tanks seemed so determined when they launched the charge. After the first tank exploded, the tank behind it suddenly changed its direction and drove to the right front, leaving a certain distance from the tank. Then, it braked and stopped in the middle of the Devourer. No. Lu Feng looked at the tank and shouted madly, but the machine gunner who was still alive on the tank stood up and turned around after firing his magazine. He saluted solemnly in the direction of the green water garden with a proud smile on his face. Boom. Then, the tank was also swallowed up in the violent explosion, and a mushroom cloud rose again on the battlefield. Then, the same sound rang out one after another, and 40 tanks, without exception, all detonated the large amount of explosives piled in their cabs, and turned into ashes in the flames. Accompanying them were the countless devourers around them, who were also vaporized by the huge energy generated by the explosion. In the explosion that could even melt the steel of the tanks, their bodies seemed even more fragile. Kill! Lu Feng roared. Then he rushed directly into the devourers in front of him, and with the steel knife in his hand, he madly chopped and killed these devourers. Lu Feng was not a fire-type mutant, and his damage to the devourers was not even as good as those of the main guards. He was sent here just to let him command the battle, and at this time, Lu Feng had given up his identity as a commander and regarded himself as a soldier, personally charging into battle. 40 mushroom clouds rising into the sky seemed to have directly ignited the fighting spirit of the soldiers of the two legions. They all roared and rushed into the Devourer army. Although the number of the Devourer army seemed to be several times or even dozens of times that of theirs, when they saw their comrades burning their lives to stop the invaders, the soldiers of the two legions at this moment all entered a real combat state. The enemy. It is the grindstone that forces us to become stronger and stronger. At this moment, everyone's heart rang with the words that Wang Feng said to them at the beginning, so the strength and number of the devourers were completely ignored by them at this moment. They now have only one thought in their hearts: kill the enemy. Kill the enemy. Kill the enemy. I won't rest. I'm going up too. Among the survivors who were resting in the distance, a strong man suddenly stood up. He looked at the direction of the battlefield, picked up his weapon, and shouted loudly. "Old Black! Sit down!" A survivor also stood up and shouted. "Go up now! What can you do? Hurry up and recover your strength and kill more devourers, so that you can avenge those dead brothers. If you go up now, you will just cause trouble." But the survivor who stood up pointed at the battlefield unwillingly and wanted to argue. "Old Black! Kyangzi is right. Sit down." Another survivor shouted in a deep voice. "Bullets without superpowers are just tickling for devourers. Now, the Brothers of the Hope Legion and the Guardian Legion are using their lives to help us delay time. We don't have time to waste now. Hurry up and recover. When our strength is restored and we can use superpowers, we will use the weapons in our hands to help those brothers avenge." Revenge. This thought not only lingered in the minds of the survivors, but also flashed in the minds of all the soldiers of the two legions. Originally, the soldiers of the two legions had already allocated tactics in advance and divided into two waves. One wave went up first, and the other wave would take over after they ran out of energy. And now, because of the self-explosion of those tanks, the commander of the reserve team, Lu Feng, has already rushed up. The soldiers of the Guardian Legion and the Hope Legion naturally refused to fall behind and all pressed forward. Revenge. Use the lives of these invaders to commemorate their comrades. This is the sentence that all the soldiers of the two legions are thinking at the same time. It may be due to the anger in their hearts, or it may be because of the unreserved attack at any time. In addition, there is no high-level devourer command among these devourers. At least, they have not seen a commander-level devourer appear on the battlefield. Therefore, after the soldiers of the two legions, along with core members such as Lu Feng and Tang Haoshan, launched a fierce attack on the devourers momentum of charging was actually curbed. Then, the devourers' battle line began to move back, because they could not withstand the fierce attack of the soldiers of the Hope base. After Wang Feng absorbed the source of energy in their bodies, all the members of the Hope base who had used the awakening potion had their own strength increased to varying degrees. Now the lowest strength of the soldiers of the two legions has reached the peak of level 5, and there are countless level 6, and even many level 7 strengths. Now the enemy they are facing is just the Predator who has just reached the level of level 5 strength, the weakest combat unit among the Devourers. In addition, their morale is high now, and the attribute is restrained, so the Devourer army suddenly suffered heavy casualties. Especially those people in the Hope base, they have no intention of saving their physical strength, and they did not use their invention to use a 3-person team to test the core of the Devourer's consciousness and then kill him. Now these warriors rushed forward very simply, several people surrounded a Devourer, and then activated their superpowers, countless fireballs flew out, and directly burned the Devourer to ashes. Although the number of Devourers was much larger than that of the two legions, because the battle line was not long, they only stretched out a long depth, and they did not have any advantage in the real battle. Perhaps because they found that the Hope base was very strong, the Devourer army began to retreat continuously under the fierce attack of the Hope base. And in such a tragic battle, once they began to retreat, it almost meant the failure of this attack. Until all the Devourers disappeared from their sight, Lu Feng and his men woke up from their dreams. Just now, they entered a state of explosion because of the self-explosion of the 40 tanks. Until they found that there were no enemies in front of them, they realized that the Devourers' first attack had been repelled by them. There was no cheering, no celebration, and no one issued a declaration of victory. On the battlefield, the soldiers of the two legions turned to the 40 deep craters left on the battlefield, stood at attention, and saluted solemnly to those who opened the prelude of this war with their bodies and courage. Okay. Everyone. Start cleaning the battlefield. Treat the wounded. The Devourer will attack at any time, take action immediately. Lu Feng stood on the battlefield and shouted loudly. Although the Devourer's first attack was repelled, Lu Feng did not see many elite devourers this time, so it cannot be said that their war with the devourer has only reached this level. Maybe it's because of the transmission through the wormhole, or maybe the devourer has placed the center of attack on other continents. Anyway, no matter what, the battle between humans and devourers can only be said to have just begun. After hearing Lu Feng's order, the soldiers of the two legions began to clean up the battlefield. In fact, there was nothing to clean up. It was said to treat the wounded, but basically there would be no wounded in the battle with the devourer. Either they were sucked dry and died on the spot, or even if they were rescued, they became older. In short, as long as they were still alive, they basically still had the ability to fight. As for the devourers, it goes without saying that they were all burned to ashes and there was not even a prisoner to be found. Madman! When the hell are you coming back? Looking at the direction of the Black Dragon Bridge, Lu Feng muttered. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 648. Duan Lei quickly got the news about the first battle with the devourer. In fact, Duan Lei also wanted to set foot on the battlefield in person. In any case, the strength that he and his Thunderstorm team could exert on the battlefield would definitely be beyond compare. No worse than anyone else. But now, he must stay at the Hope Base and wait for news from the front line, because although Ganlin County is only a county town, the defense front is still quite long. No one can guarantee that the devourer will come from Jianguan Town. In that direction, launch an attack on the Hope Base. Therefore, Duan Lei must sit at the headquarters and adjust the combat plan at any time based on the news coming back from the front. Duan Lei couldn't help but sigh when he learned that the 40 tanks all rushed into the devourer army during the battle and self-destruct, wiping out the entire army. Judging from the results, this move of these tanks undoubtedly greatly boosted the morale of the Hope Base, and therefore, their first battle with the devourer ended with an almost perfect ending. But Duan Lei knew that this was just the first battle. Although the devourer retreated, it was probably just a temporary rest for them. It was possible that they had not paid much attention to humans before, so they came out of the wormhole. He came directly to their side of the continent and launched an attack on them. Duan Lei didn't know whether the devourers would attack all continents at the same time, or whether they would gather all their forces together and attack their Dongzhou continent with all their strength. But at least Duan Lei can be sure that after experiencing this defeat, Dongzhou continent will definitely receive the key care of the devourer army. But it doesn't matter now, because no matter what, the devourer will not let humans go, and they are destined to become mortal enemies with the devourer. Fortunately, at least after Wang Feng came back last time, he had removed the restrictions in his body that suppressed their strength. Although Wang Feng also said that without that source of energy, the strength of people like himself would probably only be able to reach the 7th level peak, but Duan Lei didn't care about this. If he didn't absorb that, he wouldn't even be able to reach level 5, and he would be stuck with the strength of the awakened one forever. Now he can at least reach level 7. Besides, if they don't defeat the devourer, I'm afraid they will all be killed by the devourer. In that case, what's the point of having any potential? Just like someone said. You have great potential. I know you can make a fortune. As long as you live to be 200 years old, you will definitely become the richest man in the world. Damn it, it's better to have one bird in hand than 100 birds in the forest. What you can get right away is yours. Promises and longings are useless no matter how good they are, because you may never get them. Duan Lei now also knows that the survivors did not return to the Bishui garden on time as ordered before. However, after hearing their state, Duan Lei did not continue to order them to come back, but let them stay there to rest. Duan Lei originally wanted them to evacuate immediately after launching a wave of attacks, because he didn't want them to see the true cruelty, especially the people who died in the hands of the devourer, which seemed a bit scary. This can easily dampen their morale and make them lose the courage to face that terrible enemy again. But now Duanlay no longer has this worry. Whether it was the bloody passion they aroused in the battle before, or the tragic self-destruction of the 40 tanks later, it was enough to make these people realize the cruelty of war and awaken the passion in their hearts. Fighting spirit. In this regard, Duanlay has always believed that he is very flawed. If Wang Feng were here, maybe with a few words, he could make these people step into the battlefield regardless of life and death and fight to the death with any enemy. However, Duanlay believes that he does not have this ability. Some people are born to be commanders, and this cannot be learned. Fortunately, for these survivors, the things that Duanlay was worried about before should no longer happen, so if they don't want to come back, Duanlay will leave them alone. There are now 50,000 Hope Warriors in the clubhouse who are ready to go. This is the reserve team left by Duanlay to prevent the Devourer from attacking the Hope base from other directions. Although there seems to be no sign of Devourer yet, Duanlay still cannot take it lightly. In the current Bishui community, there are only Duanlay and Shen Yishan, as well as some civilian personnel, such as Chris, Gu Changshen, and Nongming. Once the Devourer appears elsewhere, Duanlay will need to go into battle on his own. Of course, Duanlay's Thunderstorm team is also staying in Bishui Garden at this time. They are Duanlay's guards and the most powerful force in Duanlay's hands. With this Thunderstorm team, Duanlay even dared to give the Brood Guard among the Devourers a try, but according to Duanlay's guess, the Brood Guard should not appear on the battlefield. Even if it does appear, it should only appear after half a year. After Li Yingning rescued number 7, she had already told Duanlay with certainty that the Devourer brood itself would never come to this planet through that wormhole. He will only pass through this wormhole and continuously transport the Devourer army. When he feels that the force is almost enough, he will stop transporting and continue to move towards their planet. Therefore, the most difficult thing for Duanlay and the others now is to survive the initial period. All the survivors from Tiandu City have been arranged. After the incident with the noble lady, they finally put themselves in the right position, began to be obedient, and unconditionally accepted the orders of Duanlay and others. As for the adjutant, he finally followed the noble lady to leave the Bishui garden. As for their whereabouts, Duanlay didn't know. He didn't have time to care about them now. Although it was easy to find out the whereabouts of the two people and the dog because there were a lot of surveillance in the Hope base, Duanlay's mind was not on them at all. Old Lu. How many casualties did our soldiers have? Duanlay picked up the intercom and asked inside. The confirmed deaths are 3,215 people, including 120 soldiers in the tanks in front. Lu Feng's voice came, and his mood seemed very low. Duanlay's heart sank. Just in the first wave of attack, more than 3,000 people were lost. This was because the self-explosion of those tanks inspired the fighting spirit of the soldiers of the two legions, and they fought without reservation, which led to such a result. If, according to the plan that he and Lu Feng had made before, the loss might be even greater. This was only the first battle, right? In fact, although Lu Feng and his team had won just now, it was still quite dangerous. Because Lu Feng and his team had not held back at all, they had burst out with all their strength. Fortunately, the Devourer retreated in the end. If the Devourer had not retreated, but had continued to fight with them, the consequences would be. Just think about it, when the soldiers of the two legions and the corps members like Lu Feng had exhausted their physical strength due to unscrupulous consumption, behind them were only the survivors who were resting. If they were counterattacked by the Devourer at that time, the final result would most likely be annihilation, and Lu Feng and his team could be said to be the main force of their Hope base to fight against the Devourer. Once they were annihilated, the Hope base would also lose its defensive capabilities. It would not last long with only the 50,000 Guardian Warriors and the Thunderstorm squad left in the Green Water Garden. Fortunately, the Devourers have retreated now. Perhaps it was their first time to be frustrated in a battle with other creatures, so they felt guilty and did not seize the opportunity. However, Doomsday would never allow such a situation to happen again. The battle between humans and devourers would definitely not end in 1 or 2 days. If they only relied on their momentary courage, the Hope Base would definitely be destroyed in the battle with the devourers. Old Lou. Remember next time, don't do this again. Do you know? You almost dragged our Hope Base into an abyss of no return. Picking up the intercom, Doomsday said sternly to it, although he also knew that his words were not only known to Lu Feng, but also to many grassroots officers of the 2 major legions and the core members of the Hope Base. However, Doomsday did not think about saving face for Lu Feng now. If he really did this again and the devourers did not retreat like this time, even if the battle lasted another half an hour, the result would be completely different. At that time, when everyone in the Hope Base was exhausted and their attack power was sharply reduced, the devourer who discovered this would never miss this opportunity. Doomsday had no doubt that each of the soldiers of the 2 legions was determined to fight the devourer to the death. The 40 self-destructing tanks were the best proof. However, in a difficult battle, death is not the most terrible. Staying alive and fighting continuously is a more difficult choice. Doomsday needs these soldiers to help him fight and to exert his strength in this battle that determines the life and death of mankind. He must not allow huge losses or even annihilation in the first battle just contacted. It was because Lu Feng was always calm and not as impulsive as Tang Haoshan that Doomsday handed the command of the front line directly to Lu Feng. What Doomsday did not expect was that Lu Feng, who had always been calm and indifferent to everything, was actually so impulsive. Fortunately, they were lucky. The devourer was frightened by their bombardment and withdrew directly, which did not cause heavy losses to the Hope Base. But luck, maybe just once. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 649. Of course, Doomsday actually knew that the biggest contributor to such a record was not Lu Feng, Tang Haoshan, and others, nor was it the tanks that drove those tanks deep into the Devourer army and then detonated them, disrupting the Devourer's charge formation. Those warriors. These Devourers didn't know much about humans. They had not yet fought against humans. The Devourer commander who stayed on the other side of the wormhole had already been killed when Li Yingning went to Nanzhou continent to rescue number 7. Moreover, the core of consciousness of the Devourer commander was also thrown to number 7 by Li Yingning. Therefore, after number 7 experienced the wormhole incident, not only did he not die directly in the wormhole as he imagined, but he also improved. Is now a commander-level Devourer. It was precisely because Li Yingning killed the commander that the Devourers who came to this planet had no idea what was going on here. They only know that it seems that the same kind of people they sent to this planet before have been wiped out. This at least shows one problem, that is, the creatures on this planet are not as vulnerable as those planets they have swept before. It was precisely because they did not know the details that these Devourers chose to withdraw their troops when their attack was frustrated, preparing to take a rest and wait for the follow-up troops. Moreover, they also need to send people back to the wormhole in Nanzhou continent, pass through the wormhole, and tell the Mother Nest about the previous battle situation, so that the Mother Nest can decide how many troops they will ultimately send to the planet through the wormhole. Just as Lu Feng and the others were cleaning the battlefield and counting casualties, several commander-level Devourers were standing in front of the wormhole in the Nanzhou continent, waiting for instructions from the Mother Nest. After the Devourer arrived on this planet, he was completely unfamiliar with the situation on this planet because he did not find any of his own kind. In addition, he had already judged that the creatures on this planet had the ability to kill him. Therefore, after arriving, these Devourers did not act rashly. Instead, they sent out Devourers to investigate the situation on the planet. After knowing the general layout of the planet, They sent large armies to all 3 continents and conducted exploratory attacks. Right? That's right. The Devourers that Hope Base encountered earlier were just tentative attacks launched by the Devourer army against them. Therefore, those armies of Devourers are just numerous in number, but there are no high-level Devourers involved. Predators, the lowest level of Devourers, can only be regarded as cannon fodder among their species. As long as there is life energy, they can get as much as they want. In fact, from the perspective of the Devourer brood, even elite or commander level Devourers are the same to him. They are all consumables. As long as there is life energy to replenish them, he will not feel bad no matter how many people die. Only Devourers at the level of Brood Guard are what the brood really cares about. Once they reach the level of Brood Guard, they can no longer produce as many as they want. Each Brood Guard needs to be nurtured by the brood for thousands of years before it can be completed. Not only is the life energy that makes up their bodies more pure, but the core of their consciousness is also extremely powerful. Each Brood Guard has the ability to control hundreds of thousands of Devourers at the same time. They are the real core of the Devourers. Just like the mutated zombie king needs mutated zombies to command low-level zombies for him, the brood also needs brood guards to command the Devourers for him. Therefore, the death of each brood guard will greatly damage the vitality of the brood, because that means that before a new brood guard can be reborn, the upper limit of your Devourer army must be reduced by that brood. The number controlled by the guard. The brood guard also has an upper limit. Just like the Devourer's prince, the brood cannot give birth to another prince until Li Yingning is killed. However, I heard that although there is only one prince and there are 22 positions for brood guards, the status of the prince, or the prince's role for the brood, is not as good as that of the brood guards. Because the prince can only show his role after an accident occurs in the brood. If Devourer is regarded as a country, then the prince is the first heir, and he is the only heir. But the brood guard is equivalent to the generals or marshals in the empire, and all military power is in their hands. As for the prince, he is not qualified to command the Devourer at all, and will not even participate in the battle. If it were not for the emergence of the life core, Li Yingning might not even have the chance to enter other planets. Now, the devouring commanders who arrived first have passed on the general situation of the planet to the mother nest, and now they are waiting for orders from the mother nest. The brood will not risk crossing the wormhole. It will only transport the army here first, and then it will still reach this planet through space navigation. However, he now wants to ensure that the troops he has sent are enough. At least, when he arrives here in person, this planet should be ruled by Devourer. After all, this planet is the ultimate target for their Devourers. Once discovered, they will destroy this planet, including all living things on it, at any cost. If it weren't for the fact that the life energy of the mother nest is too huge, passing through the wormhole would almost 100% cause the wormhole to be unstable and cause the wormhole to collapse. This would not only destroy the wormhole, but also cause the mother nest to die from the wormhole. Maybe this brood will directly pass through the wormhole and land on this planet in person. Several Devourer commanders were staring at the wormhole, preparing to receive the order from the brood, when the light door of the wormhole suddenly flickered violently. Several Devourer commanders were shocked. This reaction of the wormhole showed that on the other side of the wormhole, there were creatures with huge energy fluctuations that entered the wormhole and tried to pass through the wormhole and appear here. Could it be? After learning about the situation here, the brood decided to risk crossing the wormhole and come here? Several Devourer commanders looked at each other and saw that the frequency of the wormhole flickering was getting faster and faster. This was a sign that the wormhole was about to collapse. If the wormhole collapsed, not only all the creatures inside would die, but also those of them near the exit will also be torn apart by that huge energy. However, although they felt fear in their hearts, due to the suppression of the order, none of these Devourer commanders, including all the Devourers in front of the exit, dared to leave. They just looked at the wormhole with horror on their faces. They just hope that the mother nest can get out of this wormhole before it completely collapses. Otherwise, they will all be buried with the mother nest and this wormhole. Just when the flickering frequency of the wormhole was approaching its peak, and it seemed that the wormhole would collapse at any time, a tall figure appeared at the exit of the wormhole. Seeing this figure, the devourers near the exit breathed a sigh of relief. What came was not the brood, but the brood guards. However, although the brood did not enter in person, seeing that he actually took the risk of sending the brood guards into the wormhole to personally direct the battle, it is enough to see that the brood is important to the brood. The planet's attention. When the brood guard stepped out of the wormhole, the flickering frequency of the wormhole decreased a bit, but it was still in a dangerous state. And this brood guard, after stepping out of the wormhole, did not wait stupidly at the exit of the wormhole like the other devourers. Instead, he flashed his figure and left the wormhole far away. Of course, he also knew how dangerous it was near the exit of the wormhole. The other devourers were restricted by orders and did not dare to leave, but this restriction was ineffective against him as a brood guard. Just as this brood guard left, another brood guard appeared in front of these devourers, and then another. 3, 4, 5, 6. Those commander-level devourers counted them one by one, and the more they counted, the more horrified they became. In the end, they discovered that the brood had actually sent 10 brood guards to this planet. The total number of brood guards is only 22. In other words, this time the brood guards did not hesitate to risk losing so many brood guards and transported 10 brood guards to the planet in one go, which was close to half of them. If an accident had just occurred and the wormhole collapsed, destroying all the brood guards in the wormhole, the strength of the brood would be reduced by nearly half in an instant. It would take at least 10,000 years to breed this brood guard again. During these 10,000 years, the upper limit of the Devourer army would only drop to about half of its peak number. It seems that the brood is determined to win this planet. After all the guards came out, the wormhole finally slowly returned to stability, and the Devourer army continued to come out of the wormhole and assembled on the Nanzo continent. The brood guards who left before all returned after the last brood guard walked out of the wormhole. Because the wormhole has been stabilized, they do not need to escape. Although there are still countless devourers passing through the wormhole behind them, the life energy in their bodies is far from reaching the level of causing the wormhole to collapse, so now this place is considered it's safe. The wormhole is equivalent to a bridge. Its maximum load-bearing limit is 6 tons, and the weight of the brood guard is just about 6 tons, so when they pass through, it may cause the wormhole to collapse. Although the number of other devourers is large, the energy of each individual is far from the upper limit that the wormhole can withstand, so it will not cause instability inside the wormhole and the situation just now. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 650. The 10 brood guards all gathered together, then looked at the commander-level devourers and said, "Tell us all about your experiences after arriving on this planet, and try to be as detailed as possible." Yes. Those commander-level devourers respectfully agreed, and then talked about their experiences after arriving here. After the devourer commander finished explaining what he knew about the planet, the 10 brood guards lowered their heads and thought for a moment, and then discussed it together. They already had some understanding of the condition of this planet when the brood sent them here, but it was definitely not as detailed as it is now. Now that they know everything about the situation on this planet, they have to decide how they should deal with the creatures on this planet in the future. The order they received this time was to try their best to occupy the entire planet after arriving here. As for the creatures on the planet, they did not have to stay as much as possible until the mother nest came, as they did when they occupied other planets before. Because this time, their purpose is not to plunder life energy, but to destroy the planet. Therefore, this time these brood guards have a high degree of freedom when commanding the devourers to fight against the creatures of this planet. They have the right to decide how to deal with all the creatures on this planet, as long as they can conquer the entire planet as soon as possible and wait for the arrival of the mother nest. Number 7. What do you think? One of the brood guards looked at the other brood guards and asked. The devourer number 7 at Hope Base must not have known about the arrival of these brood guards, and there was actually one with the same name as him among them. However, this kind of name is not surprising among the devourers. Each devourer does not have his own name, and all their names are code names. And this code name does not change forever. Just like the number 7 at Hope Base, he got the name number 7 just because he was called number 7 in the order of the original team. Number. If the team changes next time, maybe he will be number 5 or number 8. This is not fixed at all, and they made up the number just for convenience. As for these devourers, they are all able to distinguish the core of consciousness of their own kind, so they are definitely unmistakable. These brood guards determine their codenames based on the time they were conceived by the brood. Number 7 is the brood guard conceived from the 7th brood. Their code name is fixed for life and will not be changed again. Unless number 7 dies, the number 8 behind him will replace his code name and become it again. The others will also be promoted in order, and the latest one will be conceived. Naturally it is the 22nd. Therefore, among the brood guards, number 1 is always the oldest brood guard, while number 22 is always the newest one. Among the brood guards, the higher the number, the stronger the strength, and the natural speech is more effective. Among the brood guards who came to this planet this time, number 7 was the one with the highest ranking, so the other brood guards would be the first to ask his opinion. This planet has a total of 4 continents. Except for the one we occupy now, the other 3 continents have creatures living on this planet. According to the orientation, our location should be the southernmost point of the planet, so we call it the southern continent. The other 3 are the eastern continent, the northern continent and the western continent. Number 7 must have never imagined that the name he randomly chose actually differed from the names of the 4 continents on this planet by just 1 continent. Now for our continent, according to their previous exploration, they have confirmed that there are no creatures that threaten us. I think this should be done by our advanced troops who came to this planet before. They used the life energy in the organisms on this continent to build this wormhole. Therefore, we can't find any organisms here, but we can find traces of the existence of organisms. We don't know why our previous kind disappeared, but at least we can be sure that this wormhole was built by them. Since they have the ability to build wormholes, they have also emptied the southern continent of all living things. Then why can't they wait for us to arrive? It should only take about 10 days from the construction to the formation of the wormhole. Could it be that they can't even hold on for these 10 days? What's more, although we didn't find any of our own kind after we arrived, we didn't find any other creatures here either. If they were killed by someone, why did the creature that had the ability to kill them not destroy the wormhole, but stay here and let us pass through the wormhole? Is it, in fact, after they killed our kind, they didn't know how to destroy the wormhole, but in fact they left people to guard it, but the energy tide emitted at the moment the wormhole was formed, devouring them, that's why we can't see anything after we arrive. Another brood guard guessed and said. It has to be said that his guess is indeed relatively reliable. Perhaps, it is the exit of this wormhole, or even the continent where the wormhole is located, that is the only one where no living creatures appear at all. An explanation that makes sense. Now these devourers don't know the existence of Li Yingning. They are here just for the humans who have suffered great losses from the space ghost. Therefore, they naturally could not guess the truth of the matter. Li Yingning came here to save number 7, and then relied on his sense of the same kind to kill the only remaining devourer commander. Although with Li Yingning's understanding of wormholes, it is not impossible to destroy this wormhole, although it is impossible to completely close this wormhole. But making the space of the wormhole unstable will increase the danger when devourers pass through, and the number cannot be too large. This is still something Li Yingning can do. But one is that doing so is very dangerous, and Li Yingning doesn't want to make a joke with his eternal life. The other is that Li Yingning's goal is to completely destroy the Devourer, so that he can truly be free from worries. Anyway, he is very sure that it is impossible for the brood to come here through this wormhole. Then, he can send more other Devourers over and kill some in advance during the period when the brood comes here. Devourer, may be a better way. Therefore, Li Yingning only hopes that the brood will send more Devourer armies here. The more the better, and it is best to have a group of brood guards. And now, Li Yingning's goal has really been achieved. The question now is, the food is ready, can they eat so much? At this time, the army of Devourers is still passing through the wormholes and gathering in the south continent. It seems that the brood is planning to directly pass through these armies of Devourers and kill all the creatures on the planet. After it arrives, give this planet another fatal blow and complete your mission. I think what number 11 said is right, this should be the only possibility. When the brood guard expressed his guess, it was agreed by most of the brood guards present, and they were able to think of such a possibility. Number 7 also nodded, seemingly relieved. That's good if that's the case. In fact, what I'm most worried about is that the creatures on this planet didn't take us seriously after killing our advance team, so they ignored this wormhole. In that case, we may have to go through a difficult war on this planet. Now I still have a question, that is, besides ours, this planet has 3 continents. Should we concentrate our forces to conquer one, or spread our forces and attack at the same time? Number 7 asked at the end, looking at the other brood guards. Number 11 was the first to speak. The order given to us by the brood is to conquer the entire planet as soon as possible and kill all the creatures we see, especially the human beings. So, I think we can divide our troops into 3 groups and attack at the same time, in groups of 3. On the 7th, you will be in charge here on the southern continent. Yeah. I agree. Anyway, there are already our people on the 3 main roads. Why don't we come together? Another brood commander also said. Yes. I agree. Let's come together. I agree. I agree too. The other brood guards also nodded in agreement. Number 7 looked at them and had no choice but to nod. In fact, number 7 agrees to focus on attacking all the way, because for some reason, this planet always gives him an unusual feeling. It seems that they are going to encounter some kind of crisis on this planet this time. But even though his number is the highest, it is impossible for him to overturn the decisions of everyone else. Now that everyone else has agreed to divide their forces, they have no choice but to divide their forces. What makes number 7 a little more relieved is that they have allowed themselves to sit on the continent where the wormhole is located. In this way, at least until he understands the sense of crisis in his heart, he should not encounter any danger. All right. Number 7 nodded and said. Then we will divide our troops. But how to allocate our troops? According to the situation they encountered before, the creatures on these 3 continents are not evenly matched in strength, so when we divide our troops, they cannot all be the same, right? Hey! Come here and tell me, which of these 3 continents is the strongest and which is the weakest? How big is the gap? Number 11 waved to the Devourer commanders standing aside and shouted loudly.